I had no plans on doing this video whatsoever at any point ever, but I'm making sourdough again. I've baked sourdough on and off for the last 3 years maybe. And of course, everyone bangs on about sourdough being this like amazing, unbelievably healthy bread that's better than everything else and has all these amazing health benefits. So I thought, why not just dive into that? It's an excuse to make a video about sourdough and also make sourdough, which I love doing. So everyone bangs on about sourdough being this amazing alternative to other breads. But like, is this actually the case? Is it as good as it's made out to seem? Sourdough is like the OG bread. It is the oldest form of leavened bread, so bread used with yeast, in history. It, I think, dates back to like ancient Egyptian times. And the key difference between normal bread and sourdough is that with normal bread, you just use yeast that you buy from a shop, for example. But with sourdough, you make your own. This is a sourdough starter. This is basically a culture or a colony of naturally occurring yeasts and bacteria. And typically, this contains anywhere from 50 species of lactic acid bacteria and also around 20 species of wild yeast. And the weirdest thing about sourdough starter is that every single sourdough starter is completely unique. The composition and variety of the bacteria and yeast populations is totally different from starter to starter, influenced not only by the water and flour you use to make sourdough starter, but also by your environment and even your own hands. Yes, your hands are covered in bacteria, your environment is covered in bacteria, there is yeast everywhere, there's yeast in the air. It sounds a little bit weird, but it is what it is. And the bacteria on your hands, through interacting with your starter, will actually imprint and potentially start colonizing within your starter. So there is quite literally a little bit of you inside your starter that will then potentially affect and change the flavor and texture of your bread. So it's a bit of a weird thought. That is a weird one to wrap your head around for sure. There is literally a little bit of you in the bread you make, kind of. And maybe since this is effectively a kind of weird mutant bread child, why not name your starter? Loads of people do it. I named mine Vladimir after this guy here. Now, because of this, because it's a fermented thing, a fermented good, people tend to assume that you get similar gut health benefits that you would do from, say, sauerkraut or kimchi or milk kefir, for example, but this isn't necessarily the case with sourdough. The reason being that in order to get the vast majority of benefits from fermented foods, you actually want to be consuming them while they're live. And actually, the baking process of sourdough does in fact kill all of those living cultures. At the end of the day, you bake it at like 250 Celsius for 40 minutes. So yeah, you can imagine you slaughter every single little one of those little bacteria and yeast, which is effectively part of you. So you're effectively killing like 1 million of your kids every time you bake a loaf. And yeah, so yes, it's not traditionally as good for those specific gut health benefits than, I don't need 2 bowls. You're not going to be consuming the active living cultures in the same way you would be if you ate milk kefir or kimchi or sauerkraut, unless of course you ate sourdough starter like that, which would be completely psychotic. But the good news is, through this, I cannot multitask and like do things while talking. I find it physically impossible. I don't even know why I'm trying this. So yes, you don't get the benefits of consuming living cultures of bacteria, but through the baking process, you actually get some really interesting benefits to your gut. When you bake sourdough, the fiber in sourdough and the polyphenols found in sourdough actually become more bioavailable, meaning you get more of them. Your body uses more of them and gets more benefits out of them. That's a very simple way of putting it. Hope it makes sense. The fiber in sourdough is prebiotic, so it's a really nice way of getting some good gut food. Prebiotic fibers actually feed the gut and feed the gut microbiome. They're like gut food. That's the best way of putting it. So what are the health benefits of sourdough aside from just gut health, right? One of them being that there are loads of polyphenols in sourdough. If you want to see a full video on polyphenols, I'll put the link just here. Get off, come on. This weird stuff, man. So in terms of the evidence, and actually sourdough is surprisingly well researched. You have a variety of different kind of health benefits. There are of course gut health benefits, gastrointestinal tract benefits, lower FODMAP than normal bread. And actually interestingly with sourdough, sometimes you have a slightly lower gluten content, which is very interesting. Although of course it isn't gluten free. So if you do struggle with gluten, My apologies. If you're somebody that's concerned about phytic acid being something that might inhibit mineral absorption, there tends to be a lower phytic acid content in sourdough, as lots of that phytic acid is actually pre-digested. And of course, you have the naturally occurring prebiotics and maybe probiotics. As I said, lots of those living probiotics are likely dead by the time you consume them, but nevertheless, there are still undeniable gut health benefits. Yes, that is a disturbing quantity of salt, but it is what it is. And it also seems to be a lot more friendly, so to speak, than normal bread in regard to its glycemic index. And actually, it has been reported that you can have better blood glucose control following having sourdough. And in terms of the benefits surrounding things like blood sugar and glycemic response, you have better blood sugar regulation, potential increase in insulin sensitivity as well, reduced serum cholesterol, that's the wrong flour, potentially a reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, which is interesting stuff, potentially even a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, of course, little disclaimer, you're not gonna start eating sourdough and immediately be at no risk whatsoever of cardiovascular disease and stuff like that, because that's not how these things work. In the same way, there are benefits in regard to weight control, as sourdough tends to be incredibly filling and satiating, and there might be some other mechanisms there as well. But look, I'm not gonna say that you're gonna start eating sourdough and you're gonna start to magically lose weight and cure cardiovascular disease, because I'm not an idiot, or at least I like to think I'm not. Another great benefit of sourdough is that it's really high in vitamins and minerals, and it's actually a very, very good source of certain minerals like calcium, for example, potassium, magnesium. It's also quite a good source of folate and niacin, which of course have their own individual little benefits, like helping to regulate metabolism and stuff like that. There's even studies that improving your gut health through things like sourdough can improve your mood, which I think is really interesting. There's a really, really interesting link between improving gut health and how your brain functions, and also your mood. Sourdough also has some pretty amazing antioxidant properties as well due to its high polyphenol content. The best thing about sourdough as well is that you don't actually need to knead it per se. You literally just fold it. So like you just get this kind of like rough mix together, and that's basically it. You don't actually need to knead it. Now, I like to give it a very slight knead right at the start, just to kind of like get it going. But honestly, this isn't necessary at all. You can get a very, very good sourdough going literally just by mixing the ingredients pretty roughly, leaving it in a warm spot for a few hours, and effectively forgetting about it, and like you will have a loaf of bread. Now, I'm not gonna go over the how-to in this video as much, because at the end of the day, I'm not the best source of information for sourdough stuff. The best place I would say to go for advice on how to actually make sourdough and tons of recipes would be this account here. I think she's called She Bakes Sourdough. Literally posts all the time, tons of recipes. Basically, you can then just shape it into like a really, really, really rough bowl. Now, you might find that the dough is like really, really sticky. That is totally normal for sourdough. It's gonna be a stickier loaf. Don't panic and start adding flour. The more flour you add, the worse it will be at the end. You'll just start getting a much drier loaf. Right, then I'll just chuck it back in this. And then cover it with cling film and just forget about it for like 3 hours. You can do the little stretch and folds and all that. I don't bother because I can't be bothered. You then shape it, get it into a banneton, leave it overnight, and then bake it the next day, making sure to score the bread before you bake it. Then you're left with a lovely, lovely loaf of sourdough, just like this. I like mine with some cold butter. My sincerest apologies, this isn't grass-fed butter. I know that is a massive problem. Oof. And I'm so sorry that I'm not eating it just by itself as well. Why am I even using bread when you can just eat a stick of butter as it is? Because apparently that's really good for health. Not just any old health though, human health. Make sure that you say human before something to make it sound profound. Anyway, I'm gonna tuck in. This is absolutely lovely. This is exactly how I like my bread. Fresh out the oven, little bit of butter on it. It's not grass-fed, but you know, we do our best. We do our best. It is one of the finer things in life. I hope you enjoyed the video. A slightly different video today, and I will see you for next week's video, which will be a lot more serious.